who knows? Where's the mortgage market going? Is it up or down? Should I
So-
wait to buy or should I buy now? Last year, I did lose a colleague who was roughly about my age, brilliant surgeon in London. We've got similar backgrounds, and it got me thinking about life insurance, income protection. These are things that most doctors don't even think about. It's very interesting you say that, Oliver, because I realize that a lot of my colleagues, doctors, dentists, NHS workers, they don't understand the difference between these things, and sometimes it could actually lead to costing them several thousands of pounds. I do like a good deal, and that's part of what you guys offer. You're able to assess the whole market. So what if I decided, well, I didn't just want to go to a mortgage advisor. I didn't want to speak to an extra human being. I just want to use my bank app and get a mortgage. What could happen? What could I be missing out? Yeah, so welcome back to Moneywise Doctor, a platform for doctors and healthcare professionals to make smarter financial decisions and avoid costly financial mistakes. Well, today I've got something special. It's a little bit different than what we've been doing for the past few months. I've got a real financial professional, a real mortgage advisor, and he's also a financial advisor who is right in the midst of it. He deals with doctors and healthcare professionals and helps them to arrange mortgages and insurance, and also helps with financial advice. We've known for a while, and I thought it was a good idea to bring him to share some of his insights and from experiences he's seen doctors are some of the commoner mistakes doctors make when it comes to these things. So I bring to you Oliver Dack.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, Oliver. So Oliver is the business principal at Mortgage Advice Bureau, and they do all things mortgage. I've used Mortgage Advice Bureau for quite a few years now for different properties, including different scenarios, and I can say they give top-notch advice. And even right now, I'm in the midst of remortgaging 2 properties, and I can tell you clearly now that they found me better mortgages than what I was able to get from my bank, because I checked just to be sure. And you've dealt with several hundreds of doctors. So welcome, Oliver.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you ended up here.
So I'm Oliver Dack, Mortgage Advice Bureau. I've been with Mortgage Advice Bureau now 10 plus years, and we're independent mortgage brokers that work with clients for residential and buy-to-let mortgages, and help clients like yourself to navigate the mortgage market, which is we could term it a bit of a minefield at times, and I think that's where we're here to try and help clients understand their options and make sure we're pointing you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Oliver has worked in the mortgage advisory for 10 years, so don't be misled by his handsome baby face.
I've been in the mortgage industry 20 plus years, so
20 plus years. That's longer than I've been a doctor.
It's a little while, and I've seen a lot of changes in that period of time, that's for sure.
I can imagine. Yeah, so basically, you've been dealing with a lot of doctors and healthcare professionals, and you've been giving them high quality advice. And there seems to be a common trend. Obviously, we know, and that's part of why we started Moneywise Doctor, was because doctors often don't end up making the smartest financial decisions. What are the commonest mistakes you see when you see doctors who have come? Let's say they want to get a mortgage or they want to take a life insurance. What are the commonest mistakes you've been seeing in that direction?
I think we're genuinely here to help. So our advice to anybody would be to speak to a professional sooner rather than later. So do speak to the Mortgage Advice Bureau as soon as you possibly can. I know you guys and girls are particularly busy people, and your lives are hectic. You work some crazy shifts out there, but fundamentally, speaking to a mortgage broker, they are there to save you time, and they're there to save you money, and they're there to just take away as much of the hassle as possible. So the first point I would say is please just speak to a professional as soon as possible, get as much organized as possible, and then make sure that everything is lined up so that it makes the process as seamless as possible going forwards.
So my mortgage broker probably think I'm letting them know a few months to my remortgaging rather than waiting to the last 2 weeks and then start running around.
Don't wait, and don't be the clients that have had their offer accepted on their property this morning without speaking to a professional. So I'm pleased that they've done enough research themselves, but it could have been egg on face, that's for sure. I think that's where the very first appointment with a mortgage broker, don't be scared to reach out to them. Fundamentally, with a mortgage, there's 3 key things that we're looking for, and that's going to be exploring your deposit, exploring your income, exploring your credit history. With those 3 parts, with the 90 plus lenders that we've got available to us, we'll go away, do the research, and hopefully come up with some answers for you, which will mean that you potentially be able to borrow a lot more than you thought. It could be a lot less than you thought, but ultimately making sure that we're tailoring that product to you so that it's affordable for now and the longer term, and will be suitable for you.
Excellent. I'm glad you brought up that point, because obviously at the beginning you introduced yourself as an independent mortgage advisor. There's a video on our YouTube channel that says don't go to a bank for a mortgage without looking. And you mentioned you're an independent mortgage advisor and you have access to 90 sort of products, financial houses. Could you explain a bit more about that?
So we are independent from the mortgage companies themselves. We're independent from any estate agencies at all. So we act on you as our client's behalf. Our role is to explore the market, and as you say, we're legally allowed to say 90 plus lenders, 13,000 plus products. So to get a mortgage product, there's 3 channels. It's either going to your bank direct, and all they're going to offer you is their products. There is speaking to a mortgage broker who deals with a panel of lenders, and a panel of lenders might be 20 odd lenders. It represents the marketplace, meaning that they can deem themselves as a broker. Or there's someone like ourselves who deals with 90 plus lenders and has access to the wider market. And there's so many differences between each bank that some clients, if they've spoken to a bank and they've been offered X solution, please don't just take that as that's the only option, because there's so many more options out there.
It's very interesting you say that, Oliver, because I realize that a lot of my colleagues, doctors, dentists, NHS workers, they don't understand the difference between these things. And sometimes it could actually lead to costing them several thousands of pounds when you look at the differences. I'll give you an example. For instance, I was about remortgaging a property, and obviously my bank will reach out, and then I chat to them and they give me one rate. And if I had just taken that as, well, that's the rate, then I would have been out several thousands of pounds. But obviously chatted to mortgage advisors, independent mortgage advisors at your firm, and they were able to have a look and check the whole market and find me something more suitable. But I want to touch on something quite specific. Obviously, your experience with working with doctors, you realize that doctors' sort of income can be quite lumpy, can change, and they might not be approved for some money because they think they're earning this amount of money, but they're going to actually earn more in the future. Have you seen such nuances or cases where, to the average mortgage advisor or someone who didn't understand how doctors work, they felt like they weren't qualified for this, but it turned out not to be the case?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's where we are specialists in that marketplace. We do understand the nuances within the income streams, that's for sure. And I think there's lending multiples of 4 times income, which if you're doing your own tax returns as a locum doctor, earning X amount, that could give you one result. But then there are lenders that will work with just your latest year's tax return at potentially a multiple of 5.5 times income, which there's massive differences with the borrowing capacity with those. And that's just one example of just a locum doctor, for example. But naturally, working within the sector that you're in, you get paid basic salaries, then there's overtime, commissions on top of that. You mentioned dentistry. Sometimes they're partners within a business. They possibly even just bought into a partnership within a business, and actually they possibly think that because they haven't been a partner for 2+ years and got the accounts behind them, they possibly think they can't do something. Whereas actually, do speak to a broker. They will earmark what you can or can't do. They'll do the research that's needed, and a lot of the time there's always an option available to them. It's just ultimately what it boils down to is, are the terms suitable and are the terms still affordable?
That is gold. Because basically a lot of people don't realize. I always think it's always good to talk to a broker, even 6 months ahead of time, because they can look at it and they can advise you. And you offer your appointments, your first initial appointments for free. You don't charge any money for initial appointments. Is that still the case?
100%. So there's no cost for a consultation.
No cost for
ultimately both you as a client and we as a mortgage broker need to be comfortable with what we're looking at for you, what direction of travel are we going with. And any good mortgage broker, they are worth their weight in gold as far as
fair enough.
Just the direction of travel of what you need to do in order to make sure that things are ready at the time when you're looking to transact. Because, as you mentioned, possibly we can be doing a search 6 months before the product ends, but ultimately you might be starting a house hunt now and be looking at this in 12 months' time. But there's a lot of things that can change in that period of time.
Story of my life. I think the last time I had the purchase, I had to take quite a bit of time to find the house. Yeah, but yeah, there's another point again. Speaking to me now specifically, I'm an international medical graduate or expatriate, as some people refer to it. So a lot of people on our platform, we've got thousands of doctors who think because of their visa situation that they would not be able to access a mortgage because they are on a tier 2 visa. So they think, well, I'm not eligible to apply for a mortgage. What has been your experience?
So those visas are acceptable for mortgage companies. What they might ask for is more deposit in some cases, and maybe a longer or a more solid income stream is probably how I'd put it. So ideally on a permanent basis as opposed to on a self-employed locum basis potentially, or without a track record. Ultimately, that's where the 3 key parts: the deposit, the income, the credit history. As long as you're ticking 2 of those boxes, 2 of the 3, sorry, there will probably be a lender that will be able to help you in some regard. It's just a matter of how do the terms look. These are not so they're not necessarily specialist lenders we're going to. So the likes of Barclays, they are able to accept these sort of tiers with a large enough deposit. But there'll be banks, building societies that we deal with on a daily basis that you would never have heard of before, and they are very much open for business, and they want to lend their money because that's ultimately what keeps them ticking over. But it's a very specialist market.
Absolutely. I mean, in my last video on my podcast, I was talking about the next bank I'm remortgaging with. I'd never heard of them before, but that's one of the benefits, I suppose, to going to an independent mortgage advisor, because I do like a good deal. I like to get the best deal on the market. That's how I ended up writing about my experience, and that's how all these things happen. So I do like a good deal, and that's part of what you guys offer. You're able to assess the whole market. So what if I decided, well, I didn't just want to go to a mortgage advisor. I didn't want to speak to an extra human being. I just want to use my bank app and get a mortgage. What could happen? What could I be missing out?
I think you'll be missing out on so much. I think we've just talked about banks, building societies that we've never even heard of before. And ultimately, if the banker that you happen to bank with can lend you X amount, but it's nowhere near enough, then don't just settle for that. That's exactly what we're there for. Ultimately, we talked about saving money, but that's where we're here to just make sure that things happen for you. Yes, we are here to get you the very best rates possible, but actually paying 0.2 or 0.4% more in an interest rate might be entitled you to more money, potentially less deposit, or are able to accept any missed payments in the past, or CCJs and defaults that you might have accrued when you're in your student accommodation, because we've all seen that somewhere along the line. But ultimately, that's exactly what, as a good mortgage broker, we're there to just make sure that we're pointing out all of your options. We take a really holistic approach, really, with our advice. And Andy, we do give advice and we make a recommendation at the end of the day, as opposed to just saying take it or leave it. We're there to point you in the right direction with it all.
I like to hear that at least someone is giving professional financial advice, because we've got a lot of people like me. I don't give professional advice over the internet. I'm just a blogger or podcaster. I'm just sharing my investment and life experience. But it's nice to see someone in a nice suit who actually really gives professional advice and stands by it.
We try to. But ultimately, that's where advice comes from, giving options and ruling out options. Because once we can rule out options, we'll get to an answer where we're both happy with it.
It's a bit like my role as I'm a GP, I'm a medical doctor. I could give advice. Yeah, I could give you the options and say, well, we could do some conservative treatment that we could refer it to the surgeons, but this is my recommendation. So that makes absolute sense to me. The way I look at it and the way I describe it is that going to your bank is a bit like going to a pasty shop. So I train in Cornwall, so we like our Cornish pasty.
Yeah, I like this. I like where it's going.
You go to a pasty shop and you want a salad. I'm probably going to think, well, but it's a pasty not balanced diet. Why would you just want to eat a salad? And while the banks might not nudge you in that direction, they might not be, and they will actually tell you that they cannot advise you on other products. They are not obliged to tell you that you're going to get a better mortgage or a better offer outside, but they can only give you the pasty which they have. But you want a salad, we might not even know you need a salad.
I think that's bang on, and I think that's where ultimately any advisor that you see within the bank, they are just giving it as a, there you go, take it or leave it. And as it's one of the biggest financial commitments you'll ever make in your entire life, that would you really just take it or leave it at the end of the day? And at the end of the day, that's what we're here to. We're here to tailor a solution to you and make sure that we're making sure that you're on the right track for now and the longer term.
Right, so I want to get into some other aspect that we don't talk a lot about. Talk about your independence, so you can access 90 plus, and obviously there's the bank on this side, which can only give whatever the bank they offer. But there's a middle where you talked about maybe is it restricted advisors who have access to a panel, and the panel might be representative of the data. But if you're like anyone who has dealt with data, you always know that the devil is in the details. We don't know what's missing out. So could you tell me a bit about how you're different from that sort of like advisor who can actually curate a set of products?
I think the best advice I can give to anyone, if they're speaking to a mortgage broker, any mortgage broker will outline what options they have available, and please do ask for the lender panel. And that lender panel, if it's if there's just a few names on there, then it's not necessarily the whole market that you're going to be looking at. And if you're starting to look at this lender panel and thinking, hang on, that looks a little bit short, my advice would be maybe look to get a second opinion on things. And that second opinion could well save you thousands in the longer term, or the time and effort in the longer term as well. And as you've already said, Andy, the devil is in the detail.
Absolutely. You see, why I'm going in quite details that a lot of doctors, dentists, healthcare professionals, nurses might end up spending several hours working and maybe doing extra shifts. But the way I look at it is that if I can save a couple of basis points, that's if I can save some percentage on my mortgage, that could actually be my whole salary for a month, actually. And it has been the case a lot of times. But again, I'm like dog with a bone now. Back again to this sort of like small niche. I have 20 panels I can lend to. What if the mortgage advisor, if they are aware that in the 20 they have or 30 they have, obviously this is not like yourself, who's an independent advisor that can access the whole panel. What if, let's say, another mortgage advisor, there are 20 products, a wide range of products, but they might have some knowledge that there are other products outside what they have? Would they direct me to maybe go for those ones?
No, unfortunately not. So, and that's where the devil is in the detail. Ultimately, they can only give advice from the panel that they have available to them. And unfortunately, if they knew that Danske Bank had the very cheapest rates available, and a bank that you will never have heard of before, potentially, and we're very lucky to work with them. Ultimately, they've got some market-leading rates available at the moment, and no mortgage broker is then going to say, "Oh, go speak to Ollie at Mortgage Advice."
Sorry to interrupt. A quick disclaimer: they're not sponsoring this podcast.
Oh no.
We're just giving examples generally. But thank you. That's a very useful perspective. I always looked at it from the point of view either the bank or a mortgage advisor, and from my experience so far, the real value is not just about finding me the best deals as well. Sometimes mortgage advice helps me to get my stuff together, like what I need, what documents I need, and all that. So what I'm drawing from this discussion is that a doctor whether they are sort of like whether they are earning as a junior doctor or a senior doctor, there's most likely it's best to talk to a mortgage advisor, an independent mortgage advisor. And also, if they are like me, they were not originally born in the UK, they are on a tier 2. There are mortgages available for them. It might not be every lender, and there might be different criteria, but there are options. Obviously, did I get that correctly?
Correct. Yeah, there's always options, and I think that's the key part. Is please don't bury your head in the sands. Don't think that you can't do something just because one bank has said no to you. Do speak to someone that can then say to you, these are your options and these are the boxes you need to tick.
That is brilliant. Now, I know you're a very busy man. You're probably at work waiting to book in your next appointment or to have your next appointment. So I'm going to ask you, could you tell us the trend? I'll probably ask you a question that most people would say, who knows? Where's the mortgage market going? Is it up or down? Should I wait to buy or should I buy now?
My advice is we're very pro home ownership, obviously being in the financial sector, but I think that's where house pricing, even with a big increase in interest rates over the last 18 months, has remained relatively stagnant. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about rates peaking currently. So Bank of England base rate is 5.25%, and there's another rate rise due in the next few days for March, and it's probably very likely that will stay the same, but come back to me on that point once the decision's been made. But the thing that is driving the mortgage market here in the UK tends to be the SONIA swap rates.
Yes. Sorry, most of my listeners are doctors, they're not financial people. Could you explain that? What's that swap rate?
So the swap rates are ultimately sentiment in the mortgage market of where do they see interest rates going, and banks borrow from other banks in order to lend their money out. They don't always just sit on their own cash in order to lend to the money markets.
Is that like LIBOR?
Yeah, very similar actually. So the LIBOR rate is almost been replaced with these SONIA swaps now. And on a daily basis, there's rate fluctuations for borrowing for 2 years, 3 years, 5-year money, even 30-year money. And we're seeing that those rates for the longer term fixes are a little bit cheaper now than the shorter. So the general direction of travel, the perception is that maybe those rates will start coming down in the longer term. But the question will be when and by how much.
Exactly. I mean, I tend to want to focus on things I can control.
That's right.
Like buying what I can afford, and also trying to lock in rates at, obviously I don't advise people whether they will take a flexible or variable or fixed, but I tend to go for what you can control. This is my approach.
That's it, and that's exactly where us as brokers will help. We will maybe potentially ask the questions of what are your future plans? Is there plans to start a family, have more children, potentially children leaving the home, and all these other little things that might well affect whether you have money to spend or not, and is it the sort of money you want to be spending on your mortgage? And let's try and get you mortgage free sooner rather than later where we possibly can.
Right. So quickly, just a bit more detailed stuff now. Affordability is a big question. A lot of people ask, how much house can I really afford? As a mortgage advisor, obviously, Oliver, you're a wealth of knowledge from your experience of dealing with these things day to day. What would you say in terms of affordability? How should a doctor or dentist or even a nurse, NHS worker working in the NHS, anyone look at affordability for a house they can afford?
So there is no rule of thumb here.
Okay.
And I think I used a multiple earlier of some lenders will lend 4 times the income. Some lenders will potentially go up to 5.5, even 6 times your income.
Right.
And I think that's where the amount that you need to borrow will ultimately be restricted by how much can you afford on a monthly basis. The more deposit you can put down, the better the interest rates become. Potentially the cheaper the terms, as well as the more you could potentially borrow. I wouldn't want to ever pigeonhole anyone as to a multiple, but that is probably where it goes back to my original point of do speak to someone sooner rather than later, understand your options.
It goes case by case basis, isn't it? Yeah,
that's it. And I think just going back to the specialties is if you are newly trained, newly qualified, have a new job, don't just assume that you need to have 3 months wage slips or 6 months wage slips or 3 years accounts. there's options available to you. As long as you're earning, that there's an income to use, and potentially there'll be a lender that will accept it, and to see whether we can tailor that product to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And in terms of things like, let's say, what do I need? Let's say I just want to buy my first house, and I want to start getting my things together. As a mortgage advisor, what will be the primary things you look at first, or documents I need to get together?
Sure. So the first thing I'd always recommend, make sure that you've done your own credit report. See what your commitments look like, credit card balances, loans, and just make sure there isn't anything nasty in the cupboard.
Yeah.
Even if there is any skeletons in the cupboard, just tell your mortgage broker, and we'll
It's
make
good
sure
to know.
Exactly. It's better to know it than rather than come up with some nasty surprises.
Yeah.
Things that we'll always ask for will always be the last 3 months' wage slips, last 3 months' bank statements. We'll always need proof of deposit and just the origin of where money's come from to support a house purchase.
Of course.
Again, in that very first appointment, we'll just explore where things are coming from and just make sure that we're trying to preempt as much as possible and get the documentation ready, so when the time comes, you are in a position to take things further. But the basics would always be the 3 months bank statements, 3 months wage slips, and the proof of deposit.
Right. Okay. Now, something a bit more niche. Let's say, for instance, I'm not a salaried doctor, so I haven't got like pay slips, and I know the answer to this obviously because I've done it. But there are people in the audience who are interested. They might be a locum, or they work part time, and they're not employed directly.
Sure.
What sort of documents? How can they prove that they're able to afford the mortgage?
Yeah. So a lot of professionals can sometimes be on fixed term contracts, and ideally a contract would be superb to have.
Okay.
And knowing when that contract is up for renewal, how likely it's to be up for renewal will be great to know, just because then we can then represent you as to the lender that a little bit better.
Yeah.
If you've got personal tax returns,
That's
then it will be the SA 302s.
SA 302, yeah.
Tax year overviews, which if you need any help with getting that documentation, then do speak to us, as well as mortgage brokers will help you get that document from HM Revenue and Customs.
Oh, wow.
I think that's where that document will represent your income for the last 12 months.
12 months, yeah.
The more
I
record,
tend to get that from my accountant, but I didn't know you guys could help with that as well.
Yeah,
that's great.
it. And if you're, and some doctors, they are limited companies, and that's where you might be paid as a you're almost paying yourself as minimum salary plus paying yourself in dividends income. Yeah. There'll be lenders that will potentially take retained profit from that account, from the limited company as well. Our advice is, if you've taken some tax advice from a tax specialist, then hopefully we'll be able to use that income in some way to support the mortgage application.
I like that. I like how you're staying in your lane and you're not trying to do any tax advice. Neither am I. I'm in my own lane as well.
Mortgage brokering is enough of a field, but if you are in that sector, though, I would always recommend speaking to a specialist tax advisor anyway, and making sure that things are done properly.
Absolutely. For anyone listening who wants to get specialist tax advice, obviously head over to moneywisedoctor.com. We've got like specialist tax accountants who are experts in dealing with medics, just like Oliver is a specialist in financial advice, mortgage advice, and insurance advice with medics, and he's done it for years.
Yeah, and
many more years that his face shows.
Many mortgages, many millions of pounds worth of mortgages over the years, and seen some differences as well. But just going back onto the protection question, the life insurance, the income protection, the critical illness covers, that please do seek some advice around that. Yes, you can go onto a website and you can get a comparison from some very well-known brands out there that will potentially sell you cheap products. But in that area, that's where there are cheap products, but you want a product to do the job that you're looking for it to do. And we're there to help place things into trust and make sure that we're navigating that sector as well for you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Isn't it? A lot of these comparison websites, they're just out there and they're quite good for a first look. But the problem with insurance is that you don't find out if it's any good till you need it, isn't it? And it's the reason why I want to deal with a specialist who actually understands my needs. And think about things like placing an insurance into a trust, which is something I've done. I found out just from Moneywise Doctor, from the thousands of doctors who interacted with us, most people hadn't even heard of that, and they took out the life insurance income protection, which I thought was somehow.
So life insurance, we'd always recommend placing that policy into trust. Yep. It just means that it sits out of the estate if something was to happen, and just means that it's not taxed upon. It just means that you pin down who you want to give that money to day one, and the money will just be transferred on receipt of a death certificate. And if you are sat on a life insurance policy currently and you're thinking to yourself, did I write this policy into trust? Please dig that paperwork out. It's well worth having a review, and that's where it's not going to be you that will have the problem in trying to claim this money out of a trust, for example, because you're no longer around, sadly. But that's where we definitely see loved ones benefit by making sure that things are just done that little bit better from day one. The premium that you're paying for covers our expertise in order to make sure that this is done properly. It will just mean that your loved ones will get the cash that they need potentially. But income protection, if you've bought that online, then that would just be a basic accident and sickness policy. So do speak to a broker around that for sure.
Yeah, thank you for going into that direction. It's a nice segue because a lot of times when people go to get a mortgage, that's a good time to review their finances. Obviously, you're making the biggest purchase of your life for most people. If they're not buying a football club or a business, for most people, their house is the biggest expense. But thank you for bringing up life insurance. And it's quite close to home because I know last year I did lose a colleague who was roughly about my age, brilliant surgeon in London. We've got similar backgrounds, and it got me thinking about life insurance, income protection. These are things that most doctors don't even think about. I mean, we'll buy a house insurance and car insurance because you can't drive without it. But thanks for bringing that up.
You deal with people's healths on a daily basis, and I think there's a misconception that everybody is just able to buy protection from day one, and that's where, very similar to the mortgage side of things, if you've got certain ailments or not quite as fit as a fiddle as you possibly could be, then it's likely to be a specialist route. And then likewise from a premium perspective, that's where it might not be standard terms that are offered to you, and that's where again it's the advice and recommendation, just making sure that the cover is fit for purpose for what you're looking for, really.
I wouldn't want to buy, and I wouldn't want to find out further down the line that an insurance I've bought, because I've had to claim an insurance a couple of times for different things, legal insurance and car insurance. Well, I didn't run into anybody, somebody ran into my car, and that was years ago. So these are all fantastic. I don't know, spend a few minutes, but I really want to get into your thoughts about insurance, because I have a bit of a bone to pick with a lot of insurance salespeople who advertise themselves as advisors, and I suppose obviously I can't just buy insurance; it has to be sold. But what are your thoughts around things like income protection? Why would a doctor need income protection?
So look, income protection is different to critical illness cover. So let's just confirm. So income protection is a monthly.
Can we rewind that? I think most people don't understand the difference. Income protection, what's the difference?
So income protection is a monthly benefit in the event of being out of work, long-term sick. So this will cover any particular reason for you to be off work for long-term. So it could be heart attack, stroke, cancer, but it will also cover things like depression or mental health illnesses, that if you're unable to do the job that you're looking to do, then it will give you some form of income replacement. Critical illness cover is a lump sum benefit, so it tends to be, and you pick the amount that you're protecting from outset, and that will be 50 or 100 or £250,000, whatever the need might be or the budget might be, but that will pay out for a very specific reason. So that is the heart attacks and strokes and the cancers, and I think there's so many differences within those policies that again I would always recommend speaking to an advisor around it. If you've got a critical illness policy and want to compare it, then that's something that we will do for you. So we'll actually run that through a system called CI Expert, Critical Illness Expert.
Oh, nice.
And that will tell you exactly what ailments that will cover. And we won't be able to recommend you cancel that policy unless the product we're putting in place is the same, if not better. So you're definitely not going to lose out on being protected for certain areas.
I love that, actually. So I've got nothing to lose. You can compare it for me, and then you wouldn't be able to advise me to cancel it. So I do believe, I believe, people are good and all that, but I like to see systems in place that protect doctors from being ripped off. So that sounds interesting. Wow.
It's statistics, and look, I've worked for statistics on a daily basis, so love the stats. I'm a bit of a geek on these sort of things. But
I can tell.
But that's where all products are scored, and if you've got a score that's better than the one that we can recommend upon, then we'll be recommending, look, actually, you've got a great product there, keep it in place, and we'll maybe give you some other pointers if you're needing top-ups and things like that as to how to go about it.
Yeah, so we looked at life insurance, we looked at income protection, we've talked quite a bit about mortgages. It's really amazing picking your brains about this thing. I suspect we're probably going to have you back. Fortunately for us and Moneywise Doctor, we've had quite a lot of inbound for professional advisors, and I thought, well, because we're dealing only with the very best, we're dealing with the doctors, basically advisors who have dealt with doctors, and they understand how to work with them, and they understand the issues around visas and all that. I didn't want to bring anybody actually to talk here, so I'm very happy to have you here, and thank you for all the insights. But do you have any additional tips before you tell us where we can find you?
I think the additional tip would just be, please don't be scared to speak to somebody. And I think, yes, we've covered quite a lot of detail there, and sometimes you might be sat there thinking, I really don't want to expose myself to this. And it can be a daunting experience, but really that's where, please don't bury your head in the sand. Speak to an advisor and get the professional advice that is needed, and we'll point you in the right direction.
That sounds like what I might say as a GP. Please don't be scared to speak to somebody if you're suspecting it might be cancer. Still talk to somebody. It might reassure you, and if we can't reassure you, we can point in the right direction to get proper, further investigation. So it's sounding like you could actually fit into that role as a GP. But you're a specialist in finance, obviously. Yeah. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you want to, you're not sure where to start from, there's a free book in the link you can download to help you sort of figure out how to decide what insurance you need. There's a free book you can download. It's called Doctor's Dilemma, the Life Insurance Reality. And also, if you're thinking of a mortgage, there's a free book as well. It's all totally free. You can download it. It's called From Renting to Buying. I've written those books based on my experience, and thousands of doctors have actually benefited from using the books as a step. It's like a bit of a step-by-step guide. And obviously, we have a lot of videos and all that. You can look on the playlist here or there, wherever it is. Yeah. So, Oliver, thank you so much. No, could you tell us a website? I know you're based in Norwich, but you deal with doctors from all over the UK. How can someone reach out?
So, Mortgage Advice Bureau, we're a large national network, but please do try and seek ourselves out independently, because we are all different franchises. I would recommend reaching out to yourself, actually, Andy, Moneywise Doctor, because you work with ourselves.
Oh, nice.
I think ultimately, if you were to speak to Andy, you'll always be put through to ourselves anyway, and we'll then point you in the right direction. And Mortgage Advice Bureau in Norwich is probably the best way to Google ourselves, and we'll crop up, or just search for myself. And I seem to be the only Oliver Dack in mortgages in the UK, which is nice. So
good.
You'll be able to track me down.
So it's easy to find. Yeah. So if you want a mortgage advisor or insurance advisor, if you head over to moneywisedoctor.com on the landing page, you'll be able to reach to Oliver and other great advisors who have actually been verified. So we had to verify to make sure that they are what they say they are qualified in that area, and also see the reviews for those they've actually dealt with. And I can say that over the past 1 year of working with you guys, we've had only stellar reviews, and people have come back to say they enjoyed the services you provided. Okay,
thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Oliver, for joining us, and for everyone listening and watching, whether you're at work and listening to a podcast I don't recommend, or you're driving, or just in a run, feel free to have a look in the links below. I'm going to add all the links for the useful resources, and thanks again for joining us on MoneyWiseDoctor.com. All right, so there you have it. Mortgage, life insurance, income protection is like a mini masterclass from a specialist in that area. If you found it useful, feel free to check out our other content on the YouTube channel. We've got information on lifetime ISA and other information around life insurance and mortgage. And of course, if you've got comments or questions that you would like to be answered, pop them in the comment section, and we'll do our best to answer them in as much detail as